Well, we are back once again at the fabulous Rigel Studios, right in the heart of the entertainment capital of the world. Of course, that's Las Vegas, Nevada, just moments away from the world famous Las Vegas Strip for another edition of Pick Your Politics. I'm Dennis Silvers, along with my, what was the word you wanted me to use this week? Fantastico? Oh, incredible.
Fantastic.
Incredible Stephanie Edwards, and very, very happy.
Stephanie Phillips, not
I'm
Edwards.
sorry, Stephanie Phillips. I'm sorry. I'm thinking of that's our next candidate. I got too much going on. The great Stephanie Phillips. Anyway, we've got a lot going on here in Nevada as well as the rest of the country. It's election time. We're almost getting down to crunch time here, Stephanie.
Yeah, 6-7 weeks. We're there.
Wow.
And early voting starts October 22nd. I
Pretty
believe.
soon.
Yep.
Pretty soon. So it's going to be exciting. As you know, we like to bring you candidates across the board, local, regional, statewide, some national candidates here and there, people who have already had office. We got some surprise people coming up for you. But you know what's also very important, and I think a lot of people don't give it the credence it belongs, are the judicial candidates.
Yes, that's so true. Judicial candidates are so important.
Very
and
important.
they're the ones that are kind of left out and people don't get to know like the other, candidates in their offices. So it's really important because they affect so many people's lives.
That's exactly right. The decisions they make affect all of us. So we've got a great person on today's show. Let me tell you about our special guest, Maria Gall. Maria is a sitting judge and currently in Department 9 for the Nevada 8th Judicial District Court. Maria is running in a special election for Department 9 District Court and is on the ballot, of course, for the general election for this coming November, which we said will be here before you know it. Judge Gall was appointed to the bench in June of this year by Governor Steve Sisolak. Maria received an undergraduate degree in musical arts from Vanderbilt University in 2002 and her law degree, her JD, from the University of Kentucky in 2006. Maria also has a master's degree in human rights and political science, receiving those in 2012. And something that I learned that I was very pleasantly surprised, and it kind of took me by surprise, that Maria's trained as a concert pianist. Did you know that?
We'll have to ask her about that.
We're definitely going to ask her about that. Yeah. So anyway, without further ado, let's bring up our special guest for the show today, Judge Maria Gall. And Judge, first of all, I have to apologize to you. I forgot my gavel at home. And secondly, I'm having a big dinner party pretty soon. Can I hire you out to play the piano?
That's a really good question. I'm not sure with my judicial duties if I'm allowed to have a second job. Dennis.
I don't know why not.
Tell him no, Judge.
It's going to be on the weekend, so if the price is right, we're going to have to talk about that. But anyway, very, very pleased to have you on the show. Let me start it off and ask you, since being on the bench, Judge, have you ever kind of lost sleep or been troubled because of a verdict or decision that you've rendered?
So since I've been on the bench for about a little over 2 months now, I've had 2 trials. And they were both jury trials. Mm-hmm. And I'm not troubled by the decisions that were made in those 2 jury trials, which were actually car accident trials, something that affects, people every day. And I'm sure something that many, if not all of your listeners have been involved in at some point, whether or not they were injured. And the reason I'm not troubled by those is because I think the parties picked a fair jury that reflects a cross-section of our community. And I think the jury intently listened to all of the evidence. They listened to the witnesses, they listened to the lawyers, and they rendered a verdict. And I think their verdict, because it followed a fair process, was the right verdict. So I'm not troubled by those decisions. I will say that I am a judge who is constantly thinking about the rulings that I make. And before you even get to a jury trial, there's lots of rulings that a judge can make from the
Right.
beginning of the case until the time you pick a jury. And what I always tell the litigants is I will make my job is to call balls and strikes.
Right.
And one of the worst things you can do is not call a ball or a strike. But I think one of the perhaps even worse things you can do is if you do call it wrong and the parties come to you and they present you with information or an argument that shows that you made a clear error, for you to sit on that error. So what I always tell parties is like, look, if I got it wrong, if I clearly got it wrong and I missed a case or I missed a crucial piece of evidence, come back to me, because I don't care if it's in 10 days, if it's in 100 days, or if it's in a year. If I got it wrong, I'm going to correct what I got it wrong, because my ego is not so big that I'm going to sit on a bad decision. My job here is to do justice.
Got it.
That's
And I
good.
must explain for our viewers and our listeners that Department 9 handles civil cases only as opposed to criminal. Judge, what do you think your greatest strengths are as a judge?
I think my greatest strength is that part of it is what I already talked about, the fact that I keep an open mind throughout a case, and that I will revisit decisions if there is clear error, because again, my goal is to do justice. But I think my other greatest strength is that I have, at least I strive to have, the judicial temperament expected of a judge. When litigants walk into a courtroom, whether it's a criminal case or whether it's a civil case, it's never your best day. You are in that courtroom because something bad has happened to you, or something, if you're a witness, something bad has happened to somebody you know.
Right.
And my job there is to make sure that things get presented fairly and that the court renders the correct and the right decision. And so I think in order to do that, you have to be patient, you have to be courteous, and you have to have the ability to listen to everyone with an open and fair mind. And I think that those are my greatest strengths sitting on the bench, in addition to my legal acumen and my legal experience.
Right. I must compliment you, though. Professionally, you have an extremely strong background professionally, going through law school and with the jobs that she has had with different law firms, before she got appointed to the bench.
Very true. Maria, could you please explain to our viewers the difference between justice court and district court and the types of cases that you hear for the most part?
Sure. So the first thing to understand is the way the justice courts are set up in Clark County is that there will be justice court for different, what we consider, if you think about it, they fit up to the district court. Okay, so the district court, my court, is all over the entirety of Clark County, and the justice courts sit immediately below us. In justice court, I will say justice court is probably where most litigants will be when they have a minor issue. And by minor, I understand, I should be careful using that word, because what seems minor to me in district court is not minor to everybody. Because,
Right.
for instance, if you have a small claim dispute, that's going to be in justice court, so under $10,000. Also, if it's under $15,000, it's going to be in justice court. A lot of landlord-tenant issues get heard in justice court, but it's also where you go if you are arrested. It's also where you have your first bail hearing, is in justice court. And so the justices of the peace, who we also call judges there, handle those, what I like to consider, everyday disputes. If you have what I call a more significant dispute, so if you are if it's $15,000 or more, or if you are charged with a felony, you will be in district court. And so those are the major differences between the two courts. And if you don't like the decision you got in justice court, if it's a civil case, you can appeal it to me in district court or to one of my 31 colleagues.
Right.
And judges are supposed to be no, not biased. You're not supposed to bring in your political or
No.
your religious views or anything. How do you keep your personal views out of the decisions that you make?
So the way I individually do it, and this is a way I keep myself honest and I check myself, is I write the vast majority of my orders. Because, and the reason I do that is because one, I want to put legal analysis in my orders, and it's that legal analysis that keeps me honest. Because if I can't prove to myself that the decision I'm rendering is correct, then how is anybody else supposed to believe me? And so I think the public is entitled to fulsome legal analysis. And I think the litigants and the parties who appear before me are entitled to fulsome legal analysis. It is too easy, in my view, for a judge just to say, you know what, all things considered, motion granted or motion denied. I do not do that. I always provide the parties with reasoning because I want to make sure that my biases are not creeping into my decision.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. We have Judge Gall as Maria Gall is our special guest here on this edition of Pick Your Politics. And Judge, you say that you are committed to fairness, integrity, and advancing diversity on the bench. I find that very interesting. Can you explain to our viewers what you mean by that?
Okay, so fairness and integrity are, I consider that very related concepts. Fairness, we actually touched upon a little bit. Stephanie mentioned that. I cannot allow the court, and that includes more than myself, that includes, for instance, if we have a jury trial, we have to pick a fair and impartial jury. I have to ensure that both my decisions and the jury veneer that we pick are free from look, everybody has, let me back up a little bit. Everybody has biases, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I have to make sure that the law is applied fairly to everyone, meaning that it does not matter what your socioeconomic background is. It does not matter what your political affiliation is. It does not matter your religion. It does not matter your ethnicity. It does not matter your age. Mm-hmm. You have to be able to get a fair shake. Like justice should be blind. Mm-hmm. Justice is not always blind. But part of my role as the gatekeeper in the court is to try to make justice as fair as possible for everyone, to make the process as fair as possible for everyone. Integrity is a related concept because what it means is, to me anyways, what it means is I apply the law as it's written. I am a textualist, and I am not a judicial activist. I think good government works, or we have good government when everybody stays in their lanes. The executive should stay in their lane, the legislature should stay in their lane, and the judiciary should stay in their lane. Because the judiciary does have a wide degree of discretion in the decisions we render, we have to make sure that we're staying in our lane. And we have to make sure that when we're rendering decisions from the bench, we are not creating policy. Because my role as the judge is to apply the law as the legislatures write them. My job is not to make policy from the bench. And I try to be very, very careful about that. And it also goes back to your question about, how do you ensure that your biases aren't in your decisions, right? Because it's so easy to allow your own beliefs to creep into your decisions. And when you do that, you start encroaching upon making policy from the bench. And that's something I want to stay very, very far away from.
Right. I think we both agree with that.
Yeah, and not only your belief system, but also personal life experience. Mm-hmm. Like if you were ruling on a car accident, well, if you were in a car accident and what happened to you, some of those things may come into play. And there's been a lot of talk about the mental health of judicial candidates, and if there was some kind of issue in someone's past or whatever, should judicial candidates be subjected to a mental health exam or psychiatric exam before they're put on the ballot? What do you think about that?
I mean, Stephanie, what you're really beginning to ask is a litmus test for being a candidate. And I think we've seen a story recently, right? I believe in, there was a candidate I think it's a libertarian candidate who we found out recently that the candidate isn't actually qualified for the position of attorney general, if I'm remembering the story
That's
correctly.
correct, yes.
And I think it's been conceded, in fact, by the candidate that because they are not an attorney, they're not qualified for the
Right.
position.
Right.
However, the Secretary of State's office and the county clerk's office, where you go and you register as a candidate, doesn't administer any type of test other than perhaps checking your driver's license to make sure you're a resident of the county. I certainly don't remember in anything, being asked, oh, have you practiced law for a requisite number of years? I think while in theory these types of tests may be beneficial, I think they would be very, very difficult to administer. And I think we would create larger government in trying to administer these types of tests. And so I think it's up to the voters. That would be the way I would lead, is like I leave it up to the voters. The voters should get to know their candidates. We should, we should go on shows like your shows. We should be interviewed. We go to a lot of events, including a lot of events where the electorate is present. And, I encourage the voters to come talk to us, to come sit in my courtroom. I am at 200, I will say, I am at 200 Lewis Avenue at the Regional Justice Center. My chambers is 5A. I always invite people. I have a very open policy in my courtroom. Say, I hold regular calendar on Wednesdays and Thursdays. Come visit me. If you can't come visit me, one of the things that came out of COVID for the court system was a technological advance where we now have something called Blue Jeans, which I call the Zoom of courts. My Blue Jeans link is up on my judicial website, and you can go to that link when I have calendar. You can come watch me. Come get to know your judge, because I think that's one of the best ways to get to know to get to know an incumbent judge.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people
absolutely.
don't know that
Do
that
they-
is available.
That's available, right.
And that it's actually open. Every courtroom is open to the public, and they can view that at any time. So I
And
think
that'd be kind of fun to do.
Yeah.
That's very, very good. Judge, Las Vegas, as much as it has grown, has a relatively small bar compared to a lot of other cities, of course, that are much bigger. Do you think that because you get an influx of pretty much the same people that go to trial attorneys, this and that and the other, and because it is a small bar, does that put any extra pressure on you in performing your job?
I think the bar holds our feet to the fire, as they should. I have to be a small bar, and because there is, I see attorneys all the time. And, I think when you're talking to the attorneys, how they feel about you as a judge. And I think they will hold your feet to the fire here because of the close relationship between the bench and the bar, and because so many of us who sat on this bench practiced with attorneys. In fact, I had a hearing just earlier this week where I had 4 attorneys before me, and I had practiced with 3 of them just months ago. They were opposing counsel to me in cases. And because of that, I want to make sure, at least for me, because, I always want to make sure I do a good job. I want to make sure I do as good of a job on the bench as I did in front of the bench when I was a practitioner.
Right.
I have heard that the process, the application process, when the governor is looking at a judicial candidate to appoint, is kind of grueling. Can you tell us about that process you went through? And also, if you think that there's anything that should be off the table when people are asking candidates questions.
So the process you're referring to, Stephanie, is the process employed by the Judicial Selection Commission. So the Judicial Selection Commission is composed of, I believe, if I have the number right, about 7 or 8 persons across the state. It's chaired by the Chief Justice of our Supreme Court, which presently is Ron Paragary. And then there are various other appointees to that commission. Not all appointed, by the way, by the governor. Some are appointed by the governor to the commission. Others are, for instance, appointed by the state bar. And they are comprised of a mix of attorneys and actually lay people as well. That's something a lot of people don't know, that there are lay people on that commission, which I think is very important because those lay people represent the non-attorney electorate.
Right.
The application process, as you mentioned, is very grueling. I think my application ended up being somewhere around 45 to 50 single space type pages. It goes through everything from your educational and work history. You have to identify major cases that you've been involved in and what the significance of those cases were to you. You have to submit a writing sample. You have to go through your community service, your charitable organizations, your other community affiliations. And that is the public portion of the application. There's another portion of the application that the public does not see, which is the confidential portion. And the confidential portion goes through your, basically your health history. It goes through both your physical and your mental and your emotional health. And then kind of hand in hand with that confidential portion is there's a background check.
Right.
I had to go and have my fingerprints waiver for the government to do an entire background check on me. And this is why I think when you are qualified by the Judicial Selection Commission and you are nominated to the governor and then you are appointed by the in my mind, that's a big deal because you have gone through a very rigorous vetting process, including the background check. And so the electorate, in my view, should feel comforted that the judge that has been appointed has passed all those requisites.
Yeah, you've had to jump through a lot of hoops. I'm trying to get those same medical records about my co-host, but for some reason I'm running into a little bit of a problem. Judge, why are you better prepared, or you think people should look at you more seriously than the opponent that you are facing?
I think it's for the exact reason I just said. And what the electorate might also not know is that I was nominated twice to the governor. Okay, so I've been through that very rigorous vetting process twice. I went through the process last year for Department 11. Myself, Ellie Rouhani, and Carl Armstrong were nominated. The governor appointed Ellie Rouhani, who's in Department 11, and she's doing a fantastic job.
Yeah, she's great.
I couldn't have lost. Yeah, I couldn't have lost. You know, I say like I was the first loser to Ellie Rouhani to a better person. Right? And then I went through it a second time. I went through it a second time this spring, and this time I was appointed. And I think because of that process, the electorate really should feel good that the person who's in the seat is qualified in all aspects, qualified because of their educational background, qualified because of the legal experience, but also qualified from, what's the best way to put it? The absence of any troubling elements that may come up on a background check.
Right.
Do you think that judicial candidates, do you think that if they have an arrest record of any sort should be able to be a candidate for a judicial seat?
I think it depends. I think right now we do not have having an arrest record is not part of the qualifications. So that doesn't immediately disqualify somebody. And there's a lot of things that could have happened in someone's past that, you know, they may have paid their dues and they may need to move on with life. However, I think it's something that the electorate should know about. I think it's part of that mix of information. And I think it's something that the electorate should get to decide.
Yeah.
So that should be on the table as something that the voter should be able to ask of candidates.
It's relevant.
Yeah.
It's relevant.
I
You're
agree.
electing somebody, whether it's to a judicial seat or whether it's your assembly person, whether it's your secretary of state, whether it's your governor. When you become a public figure, you know, your record, including your past history, it comes out, and it's
Yeah.
part of what the electorate, if the electorate demands to know about it, then it's relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree.
yeah, I totally agree. Maria, let me ask you this, give you a scenario. The chief judge calls you up and said, Judge so-and-so, unfortunately, is in the hospital recovering from this and that. I need you to cover this trial, and it happens to be a criminal trial. Number one, would you be prepared for it? And number two, do you look at things differently because it is a criminal trial? Are your emotions maybe a little bit different because it is a criminal trial? How would you handle that?
So if that were to happen, if Chief Judge Weiss actually called me up and not one of the judges who has a criminal docket, which it's not out of the realm of possibilities,
Yeah,
it could
right.
happen.
Yeah,
I would be 100% prepared to take that. And to your other question about, do I look at things differently? No, I don't. My role as a judge in a criminal trial with a jury, right, is the same as a judge in a civil trial with the jury. At the end of the day, we are looking to get to the same goals, which is the ultimate goal is justice. And
right.
you start getting to justice at a trial by making sure you see an impartial and fair jury, right? And that's the same in a civil trial
Yeah,
or if it's in a criminal trial. And it's the same thing. Your role as the judge, once the jury is seated, is the same. Your role actually gets really reduced once the jury is seated because the jury is now the fact finder.
all right.
Your job as the judge is the gatekeeper to call balls and strikes on the evidence, right? And then to instruct the jury on the law at the end of the day. So I look at my role the same way as whether it's a civil trial or or a criminal trial with the jury. I'm looking to get a fair and impartial jury, and I'm looking to make sure that the rules of evidence are adhered to and that a fair verdict is rendered by that
Right.
jury at the end of the day.
Right. And that's all you want?
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about criminal justice reform. They did some reform back in 2018 as it pertains to nonviolent offenders. Do you think that they went far enough with that reform, or do you think that they need to do more? And if so, what else would you like them to do?
Stephanie, let me ask you, is there a particular aspect of that reform that you're concerned with?
The nonviolent offenders, they want to be able to have them get out of prison and not spend like the white collar crime, things like that, where they can get out of prison earlier or have different kinds of sentences where they're not in prison. Sometimes these people, especially political people that they target, we see this all across the country all the time where they target,
Yep.
Political adversaries. And when there's things like that, do you think that they need to reform that some more? Like maybe a nonviolent drug offense. Do they really need to be put in jail or prison, or is there another avenue for those types of offenders that could be the answer?
So let me talk about this. This actually delves into our specialty courts program that we have across the state and also in the 8th Judicial District Court. The specialty courts are actually shown to have an enormous impact on nonviolent offenders. And if I'm remembering the statistics correctly, I think defendants who go through the various specialty courts, which includes Veterans Court, but also includes, drug treatment court, are 45%, and don't hold me to this, but I think it's 45% less likely to recidivate than other defendants, which I think that's statistically significant. That's significant.
Sure
Very
is.
significant.
And so I think the specialty courts work. And somebody actually just asked me, do I think the specialty courts should be expanded? My answer is yes. And there's one very specific expansion that I think we should look at, which is a program called restorative justice. And I think restorative justice should be looked at for nonviolent juvenile offenders. And what restorative justice does is that, and remember, this is for nonviolent
Right.
offenses only, is that it brings together the offender, it brings together the victim, and it brings together community members to talk about what happened. And it talks about what can that youth, remember we're talking about juveniles here,
Right.
youths, do to correct the wrong that he did. So an example is, let's say a youth vandalized, right, threw a rock through a senior citizen's home just because, he's being a dum-dum, right? And he likes throwing rocks. You would bring together that youth, the senior citizen, and other community members, and they would talk it through. And maybe the senior citizen would say, you know what? You don't realize that I live on a limited income. I don't have insurance that's going to cover this. I'm going to have to use my Social Security now to fix this window, and it's going to cost me $800 to fix this window. And then they would think of solutions. So maybe the youth gets an after-school job and pays for the window, right? Maybe
Right.
he comes over and visits with the senior citizen. Maybe he helps her, mow her lawn.
Right. Right.
Probably not in Las Vegas. Or, wash her car. Or
But something like that, yes. The concept is good. Yeah.
that is. And then you sign what's called a repair of harm agreement.
Yeah.
And everybody is bound to that agreement. It is
That's
a
great.
contract that can
Yeah.
be enforced. And if the youth upholds his or her end of the bargain, then the offense is discharged.
Yeah.
And that's great,
That's great.
right?
Yeah.
Win-win for everybody, and
Yeah.
it keeps the youth out of the prison pipeline.
Yeah, that's great. I don't know, Judge. I don't know too many senior citizens that have an this must be a stained glass window if it's $800 here, Maria. I mean, wow. Anyway,
It's a big window.
we're getting a little short of time. I want to have you tell people where to contact you. It costs money to run a campaign, obviously. People, be gracious enough to step up to donate. Where can they go do that? What's your website? What events do you have coming up where people could go out and meet and greet?
Okay, so my website is my name. It's www.mariagall.com. That's MariaGall. And if you can't remember my last name, I like to say Gall for all and all for Gall.
I like that.
That's
how
good,
I'm
yeah.
using it. Yeah.
I like that.
I am out in the community right now at various events. Like for instance, tonight I'm going to be at Conservative Town Hall at the Ahern Hotel. So that's one place people can come meet me. I will be on a panel of judges that's being moderated, and it's going to talk about. I think there's going to be a lot of questions similar to the ones that you asked at tonight's town hall. I will also have a fundraiser on October 5th at the law firm of Meyer Gutierrez, which is on Spanish Ridge Parkway. I will put that will be up on my social media. And speaking of social media, I also have a Facebook page and an Instagram account. But people can contact me at my email address, which is maria@mariagall.com. I'm happy to hear from anyone. If you would like to make a donation, you can make it on my website. But I also understand this is like challenging times for a lot of people.
Yeah.
We have inflation. Gas prices have gone down a little bit, but they still have not gone down fully for everybody. People are struggling out there. And so look, if you can donate, that's great. But if you cannot donate monetarily, you can donate your time. You can go out, you can canvas for me. If you want a yard sign, even just putting up a yard sign in your neighborhood is a huge help. And you can put up that yard sign. And by the way, your HOA cannot tell you that you cannot put up a yard sign. That's in the statute.
Wow.
So
That's good to
I didn't
know.
that. I didn't know that either. Yeah. Wow.
Thank you for
Yes.
that, Judge.
Yes, please contact me and get that for you. But if you'd like to know anything about me, please reach out and please visit my court. And y'all, thank you so much for having me on the show today. This has been
Oh, it is absolutely our pleasure to have you on. We wish you nothing but the best in your campaign. And if there's anything Stephanie and I could do to help you along, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, Judge.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thanks,
Thank you very
Maria.
much. All right, Judge Maria Gall. Delightful.
Yes, she is very smart, and I think she's going to be fair and balanced and run her courtroom the way it should be.
yeah.
Love her.
Yeah, and
She's great.
I was wondering, of course, we ran out of time, but I would have asked her, any aspirations? I don't know, appellate judge, Supreme
Supreme
Court
Court.
judge in Nevada?
Yeah,
But we'll have to wait and see, but she's absolutely terrific. All right, that's going to wrap it up for another edition of Pick Your Politics. Remember, vet your candidates, like the judge said, and more importantly, get out there and vote for Stephanie Phillips. I'm Dennis Silvers, another edition of Pick Your Politics. And we'll see you back same time, same place next week. So until then, so long, everybody.
See you later.